Hello, humans, and welcome to another episode of Gen X Gamer. Let me start off by saying that I'm a fan of all platforms. I love having, the PlayStation, the Xbox, Nintendo. I'm not so crazy about the newest offerings. I'm not crazy about this generation of consoles. But in general, I have, at this point, probably thousands, at least 1,000 games of each over over the life cycle of these products. And, the fact that especially the Xbox brand that was so dear to us in the 7th generation has fallen so far to the point where the flagship, what was supposed to be the flagship game for the Xbox, makes more waves on PlayStation than it does on Xbox. And the latest figures, they're up to number 8 on PlayStation. I mean, that's more excitement that you've seen on the Xbox since it launched, probably. Probably the saddest part for me is that I remember, I was in the middle of college when this launched, and I was so sad that I couldn't get, the collector's edition. It had the watch and the briefcase and everything else that it came with. And I was like, man, I really missed out on that. I wish I could have gotten it. Because I think a lot of Xbox fans, especially a lot of Xbox 360 fans, were hoping, just like myself, that this game was going to be a return to form, right? A throwback to the Xbox 360 days where, games were still interesting. There was a lot of, action and great storytelling and all that stuff. And the game was underwhelming at best. I mean, it was okay. It was just okay. I finished the game. It was just okay. It had some good ideas, but it seemed like it was just not developed fully, and I think a lot of times this is where you see the lack of crunch time, if you will, right? The lack of having creators, programmers, artists have the freedom to do what they want, in a way that they want and come up with different ideas. It's a control, in this new controlled corporate environment, there's things you can't do. You can see the difference between, for example, Starfield and one of my favorite games, Helldivers. They could have done so many crazy things, so many, so many Fallout type stuff, wacky characters, better conversation, better design, but it wasn't any of that. It all fell in the same trap of that, it's one of these first corporate games, as I like to call them, where, the initial idea is sort of there, but then the Microsoft corporation comes in, the bean counters, HR, and start regulating everything, and then all of a sudden it becomes a project, and that's what really takes out the souls of these games, in the end. And that's a totally different conversation. But for this, for this morning drive, and guys, thank you again for joining me. Members, if you haven't done so, there's a Nintendo card up there. If you guys want to go pick it up, it's still open. And I think there's like 2 games still that haven't been claimed on there. Regardless, guys, thank you for joining me. I really do appreciate it. And these are just thoughts I have based on the news that I hear, whether it's a, YouTube a thumbnail that I see, sometimes I listen to Newswave and what have you. And man, it's so frustrating if you are really a fan of Xbox, and I'm not a fanboy, I don't think that wishing for the demise of another brand makes video gaming better. It doesn't. I want more companies to be successful. I want the pie to be bigger, more slices to the pie. I want the Neo Geo to be successful, to have options for people who want physical media. I want Atari to do better, to come up, maybe with their own console and what have you. You know, I'm glad that Evercade's doing what they're doing. You know, I mean, everything's changing so fast. You know, and this is part of it right here. To think that more people are enjoying Starfield on PlayStation is crazy. It's crazy. I just when this thing launched, I mean, did anybody think this was going to happen? Probably after you finish the game, going, what the heck? The improvements that they put out after was, you know, it wasn't anything to write home about. The DLC that first came out was, again, underwhelming, just like the game. And here we are in 2026. You know, the Xbox brand, just a former shell of itself. No more Phil Spencer, you know, and all the promises that he made about all the stuff that was coming, what different, you know, company this was going to be. And at this point, you know, what it stands out to probably investors and other folks is that Xbox is getting to the point where it's worth more in pieces than it is as a whole. What do I mean by that? Oh man, selling some of these big studios that they bought, which they're not going to get their full dollar return on investment, I can tell you that. But it's starting to make a lot more sense than to, you know, keep making games that nobody plays on the console. At this point, what difference does it make? It's not making a difference to sales, right? It's not making a difference to customer enjoyment. It's not making a difference to anything. You know, and PlayStation hasn't done the greatest job with their brand. You know, it's not like Bungie was a great investment. You know, it's not like Marathon is setting the world on fire. Just the bar, guys. The bar is so low right now, and it's making it easy for Nintendo just to blow these guys out of the water, because the hardware advantage that these guys have is all for naught, because they just don't have any substance. So for a lot of people, it's just an easier choice to make. You know, do I spend $450 on a Nintendo Switch 2? Or do I spend, you know, $600, $700, $800 on these other platforms so I can play games that are what? Underwhelming? It's crazy. It is crazy. But, you know, at least somebody's having fun with the game. Unfortunately, it's not going to be any of the folks that supported it at first, right? It's not going to be anybody that owns an Xbox that's actually making waves with this game. It's people on PlayStation. And that is a sad state of Xbox. All right, humans, I will catch you on the next one. Thank you so much for joining me on this morning drive. I really do appreciate it. If you like this kind of content, want to hear morning drives whenever I have some free time, make sure you subscribe to the channel. That really helps a lot. Take care.